Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, let's go. My neighbors, and I say that in quotes because we're not directly neighbors but live in the same townhouse complex, are nightmare human beings. Specifically the father, let's call him Bill. A little bit of backstory here. We all live in a townhouse complex with a shared yard. Bill is a major alcoholic, and his family has playground equipment and garbage taking up the majority of the yard. Of the 11 units sharing this particular green patch, literally nobody uses it because these people are such nightmares. Bill lives with his deaf wife, their 2 toddler sons, and a 14-year-old daughter he has from a previous marriage. Bill is an absolute garbage human being. He has called his wife a derogatory term to my face multiple times with her standing beside him. He once explained to me, "I'm not racist. I just don't want my daughter hanging out with black people." I once heard him screaming at her in the yard, "I don't care if your friends are gay. I don't want them in my freaking house. I'm very bisexual, for the record," and immediately purchased pride flags to hang in my windows after that one. It was so worth it. He was beet red when he saw me hanging them. Bill also has a foot fetish and has approached me inappropriately many times over the years. So my complex allows dogs. Bill is the definition of an irresponsible pet owner. There's no fencing around our units, and he has 2 big Rottweilers he just opens the door and lets run wild. They've chased my car before. I've seen them jump on multiple people. They never clean up their dog mess. They've had dozens of eviction notices just based on their dogs alone. Our landlords are unhelpful though, and just refuse to actually follow through with eviction. 2 weeks ago, one of Bill's dogs, obviously unsupervised, followed me to my front door and jumped on me. I have 4 large scratches down my leg, 2 of which drew blood. They're big, ugly, scabbed bruises now, and I swore this was my last straw. It's not the dog's fault, so I don't want to go to the police because where I live, that would result in euthanasia. As my fiancé and I were discussing how to deal with this, I saw flashing lights in the backyard. It was an ambulance. Lo and behold, one of his dogs jumped on him. He fell back and landed on one of their decrepit pieces of playground equipment. Bill landed on his spine and was immediately unable to use his arms and legs. Paralyzed from the neck down, basically. From what I've heard, he got spinal surgery and is now recovering well. I'm grateful for that, because even though he is an absolute scuzzball, his wife is surprisingly decent, and he needs his hands for American Sign Language. Either way, he now has a taste of his own medicine. They have hired someone to train their dogs, and if that doesn't work, I have more than enough evidence between text messages and photos of my own injuries on top of his own hospitalization to make an eviction order finally stick. And hey, if you ever see this yourself and suspect it's about you, forget you, Bill. Your wife and kids deserve better, you absolute piece of garbage. About 10 years ago, I was working in a large organization with numerous departments. I was a subject matter expert who worked across different departments. I viewed my role as making the lives of the people I worked with as simple as possible, and my clients appreciated me for that. Unfortunately, this came back to bite me because they began to expect me to perform miracles. Before I started this job, someone had decided to split up a department, but they didn't do it properly. As a result, all the systems still saw them as a single department. The 2 department heads despised each other. My solution was to create a workaround in the system I had control over, so that they appeared separate from each other, and no one could see the other area's data. However, in every other system, one department seemed to fall under the larger one, and if you looked closely at my reports, you could clearly see the workaround. The department head of the smaller department was really frustrated with this, and asked me to fix it. I explained that the issue was at the organization level. She needed to write to the higher-ups and get written authorization to change the official organizational structure. Once that was done, the rest of the systems would follow suit. If I changed it in my system, something would break, and she would have bigger problems than just having to ignore a header that I would hide or delete from her reports. She insisted that if I changed the structure in my system, it would start a domino effect, and everyone else, who was less helpful than I was, would have to listen to her when she said that she wanted their system changed to mimic mine. I tried to make a joke of it, explaining that although I seemed all-powerful because I could get things done for her, this was not going to work out that way. She actually needed to deal with the organizational bureaucracy nonsense. I told her, "Trust me, I can't help with this one." This response only frustrated her more. We went around this issue for about a year, and she finally lost her temper with me. She called me late one Friday afternoon and told me I had to make the change or else. I explained again that things would break, but she wasn't having it. She cut me off and told me to do as she asked, or else, cue malicious compliance. I asked her to put her request in writing, always cover your back. She promptly sent me an email. I responded straight away, stating that doing this would break things, and we had discussed it before, but since she insisted, I would get the changes sorted as soon as possible. I organized for the change in my system. I stopped by my boss's office on my way out to tell him what was happening and to prepare for the fallout. Again, always cover your back. He chuckled and wished me a good weekend. The change was easily reversible, and the problems would be very frustrating but minor. No one was going to be harmed, so neither of us was too concerned. At 11 a.m. on Monday, the department head called me in a huff. Apparently, she wasn't able to see any of her staff in the human resources system. I said, "That sounds about right. Now that my system and human resources don't agree, computer says no. Remember how I told you things would break? This is things breaking. I'm happy to switch my system back." She simply hung up on me. Word got around that she called the human resources person, who told her that the only way to get the change she wanted was to follow the process I had been pointing to for the past year, and that only she had the authority to ask for the change. She spent the rest of the day pulling favors to get the process I told her about months before fast-tracked. All of this could have happened without anything needing to break. By our next meeting, things had been changed properly. The situation was never mentioned again. But from that day onwards, if I told her that I couldn't do something, she took my word for it. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. My cousin Emily and I decided to take our beloved dogs to the local dog park one sunny morning. Our dogs, Max, a boisterous Labrador, and Bella, a sprightly beagle, had been cooped up indoors for far too long. They were driving us up the wall with their endless energy, so we figured some socialization and playtime would do them and us a world of good. We arrived at the park around 10 a.m., the place bustling with fellow dog lovers and their furry friends. Everything was going smoothly. Max and Bella were having the time of their lives, running around and making new canine pals. Emily and I were enjoying some much-needed relaxation, chatting about life and sharing a few laughs. It was shaping up to be a perfect day until the unexpected happened. An eccentric woman, who I will call Entitled Mom, approached the fence. She had this intense look in her eyes, but she started with a compliment. "Your dogs are absolutely adorable," she said. We smiled and thanked her, thinking it was just a friendly encounter. Little did we know, things were about to take a bizarre turn. Entitled Mom then pointed at Max and asked, "How much for that lovely Labrador?" I was taken aback. People usually ask about dog breeds or training tips, not prices. I replied, "Well, I paid $600 for him, but he's not for sale if that's what you're asking." She did not seem to grasp the concept. "Oh, my son really wants a puppy, and your lab looks perfect for him," she exclaimed. Emily, trying to be helpful, suggested, "That's wonderful. Why don't you check out the local shelters? They often have labs available for adoption." But Entitled Mom was having none of it. "Why would I do that when I can simply take that lab right there?" she retorted, her tone shifting from friendly to aggressive. I was stunned. "I'm sorry, but you're not taking my dog. Besides, where is your son at the moment? He's in the car. Do I need to come into the park and get the dog myself?" she threatened, her voice rising. Emily stepped in, her protective instincts kicking in. "Lady, you are absolutely not taking her dog. We will not hesitate to call the police." That is when entitled mom did the unthinkable. She brazenly hopped over the fence and lunged for Max. Chaos erupted. Max, sensing the danger, barked furiously and darted away while Bella joined in, barking her head off. At that moment, entitled mom's son, a teenager who seemed mortified by his mother's actions, got out of the car and ran towards us. "Mom, what are you doing? Leave the dog alone," he yowled. Emily did not waste any time. She whipped out her phone and dialed the police, explaining the situation as calmly as she could. Meanwhile, entitled mom was still trying to chase down Max, who was now running circles around her, almost like he was mocking her. The other park-goers had gathered around, some trying to help, others just watching the bizarre scene unfold. The police arrived within minutes, and entitled mom immediately switched gears. "These people are trying to steal my dog," she screamed, pointing at us. I could not believe her audacity. I quickly stepped forward, holding up Max's registration papers and adoption documents. "This is my dog, and I have the paperwork to prove it," I said, my voice steady despite my anger. The officers took one look at the documents, and then at entitled mom, who was now flushed with anger and embarrassment. They did not buy her story for a second. They detained her, and one of the officers took her aside to get her statement, while another spoke with her son. Her son, looking thoroughly embarrassed and apologetic, explained that his mom had become obsessed with getting him a dog after seeing a picture of a Labrador online. He had no idea she would go to such lengths, and apologized profusely for the trouble. The officers were professional and efficient. They escorted entitled mom to their car, and she was still yelling about her supposed rights and how we were the criminals. Meanwhile, her son was taken to a family member's home. As they drove away, the park slowly returned to its usual relaxed atmosphere. Emily and I were shaken but relieved. I decided to press charges against entitled mom for attempted theft. As we sat on a park bench watching Max and Bella play as if nothing had happened, we could not help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. "Can you believe that just happened?" Emily asked, shaking her head. "No, I can't," I replied, chuckling. "I mean, who does that?" We laughed about it all the way home, the tension melting away with each giggle. It was one of those surreal experiences that you just cannot make up. In the end, it was a reminder that some people are simply outrageous. But thankfully, justice prevailed that day. And Max, he got an extra big treat and lots of belly rubs for being such a good boy. 24 female feel like this is relevant to this subreddit. But let me know if it isn't. I just feel like venting. I am living with my parents in a city with a high cost of living and a bad housing situation. It is a small 2-bedroom apartment with one den, and my dad generously gave me the bedroom, while my mom took the master bedroom. This story is about my mom. I won't delve into the complexities of growing up with her as a mother, but I'll mention some things to give you an idea of who she is. When I was 7, we lived in a big house, and I always felt lonely because my mom would take long naps in her bedroom. She was likely depressed, but after watching television for hours, I'd jump into bed and nap with her, looking for some affection. One of my earliest memories is of her half awakening, realizing it was me, and then telling me how she didn't want me and how sorry she was that I was born. Throughout my life, she would escalate to screaming and guilt-tripping over every little thing. For example, she lost her phone almost every day when I was in high school. After searching around the couches, she would dramatically sigh and mumble to herself until I asked her what was wrong. She would then ask me to help her look for her phone, and I usually would. But if I ever said no, like if I was in the middle of homework or doing laundry, she would start complaining about how I was a bad daughter who never helped her, how I was selfish, and that she would never help me out if I needed it. All this over a misplaced phone. Not to mention that asking her to do anything, including cleaning up her own spills or candy wrappers, was like pulling donkeys into a ditch. She often makes herself out to be a better person than she actually is. And since she has a shrill voice and screamed nearly every day of my childhood, I now absolutely detest loud noises. More relevant is her relationship with my dad. According to her, My dad cheated on her before I was born with a dirty woman, and she wanted to divorce him but stayed for my brother and me. This is likely untrue because she probably just enjoyed spending his money in comfort. She often bragged about how she used to date doctors and lawyers, especially when we went through some financial trouble a few years back, and how she could be living better than she does now. I have a feeling she stayed with him because he is somewhat of a pushover who she verbally and sometimes physically abuses, and it's too late for a fresh start. She constantly asks him to buy sweets for her, complains about her colleagues, she began working again in recent years, and gets upset if my dad doesn't understand the occupational jargon she uses, or really, if he can't read her mind. If she does her laundry, she could leave her clothes in the washer for hours before he comes home and reminds her. Then she would tell him to do it for her. I was often the one to do it for her because I also needed to do my laundry, and she would say things like, "Why won't you help your mom out this once?" But I stopped speaking with her a year ago. She has always had an explosive temper, a persecution complex, and narcissistic tendencies. I'm still trying to manage my own personality problems, obsessive-compulsive disorder, anxiety, that arose from being raised to not speak up for myself and to deal with conflict poorly. But I've been doing what I can to pretend like she doesn't exist. Now, we've moved around a lot, at least 8 times in my life, and almost every house we've lived in had a period of dealing with ants. In our last place, we were fine, until she left out a cup of soda or juice, and the ants came in overnight. It seemed like I was the only one who cared, that there were ants crawling around the dining table and eventually in our bathrooms, which continued for a few months. In our current apartment, we have been ant-free for 10 months, which I'd been pleased about. But today, when I was doing my laundry, the laundry closet is right outside the master bedroom, I noticed a line of ants coming out of my mom's room. The frustration is overwhelming. I know her room is filthy from seeing her bring all her food there to eat, from dinner to Indian food to cookies, and from what I know of her hygiene. Think someone who forgets to wash their hands after using the toilet and sneezes in their hands. Now she is making it everyone else's problem because we have ants on the loose, and they may wander into my bedroom next. I feel like she should have prevented this issue by doing the responsible thing and cleaning up after herself. It annoys me even more because we had been doing well at keeping bugs at bay. But now she'll just yell at us if we get mad at her or tell her to clean up regularly. She'll probably just give a disinterested "oh okay" when my dad mentions the ants and expect us to do something about it, which we will, but still, her attitude never fails to irritate me. If you got this far, thanks for letting me rant. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences and opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.